Number 9. I guess we'll call it to order or start it. So,
Sorry.
Mr. Sanders, would you like to introduce the items that we have before us today?
Yeah, I'll have Abby go ahead and approach. We've got the 3 items today, so I think we've got time to get through all of these. A couple updates and some new programming.
Okay, easy peasy. Good morning, Abby Gilroy with the Neighborhood Development Corporation, Executive Director is what I was going to say. You're all familiar. I know you're a little pressed for time today, but I want to thank you for allowing us some time on the agenda just to come in and give a little information on what we've been working on in this past year, where we're going in the future. But also, we've spent a lot of time this year working on gathering metrics and data on the impact of the projects that we have done. So the presentation will be a lot of that information, more so than what we've been doing and where we're going. But I think it's really important for you to see the return on the investment that you're making in our organization and what that impact's been on the city and our community as a whole. So without further ado, I have to do something to get it up. You got it? Okay. I don't have that. You're all familiar with our mission, but just a quick refresher. You know, we really set out every day to be a catalyst for redevelopment in our neighborhoods, in our little commercial nodes, and that sort of work. But more than the bricks and mortar, we really have started to focus on setting our neighborhoods up for the long term and giving them the tools, the resources, and connections that they're going to need to be self-sustaining and prosperous into the future. So that's been a large piece of the work we do. We aren't turning out projects year after year, but we're spending a lot more time in those neighborhoods. 5 to 7 years is what we really feel it takes to get those neighborhoods going in the right direction out of that transitional phase that they were in. But when we're considering our projects, I think what's important, some of the words that we really live by and make sure that our projects are aligning with is collaboration. Are they purposeful? Are they going to inspire continued revitalization, rejuvenate, and then ignite that community prosperity? So we are very thoughtful and purposeful with the projects that we take on. Some of the areas we've worked in is really, you can see we just work right outside that core of downtown Des Moines. We have incredible developers and investors in Des Moines market that have done a great job downtown in the core and kind of goes out west down Ingersoll and Graham. So we see our impact really happening around those cores and building the neighborhoods around that. We spent a lot of time kind of in the middle section around Drake, Waveland Park, 6th Avenue corridor. But these last couple of years went further north, up north past the river, and worked in that Highland Parks, Union Park area. In years past, Capitol East, Columbus Park, Indianola Hills is new for us as well, and Southwest 9th. So we feel like we're hitting everything just right around that core and trying to impact each ward as we're able. One thing with, like I've said, this work we've been doing this past year and gathering data and metrics, we've called it the NDC effect. So this is what's showing what the effect of the funds that we do receive is having on the neighborhoods and the community as a whole. So that's what this next few slides are, a few neighborhood kind of case studies that we did. And you can see what this NDC effect is on the neighborhoods itself. So the first neighborhood we'll talk about is Highland Park. You're all familiar. This has been one that has been a really great success story where we're able to do a lot of work in a short amount of time through our partnership with InvestESM and the city and county funding. In this neighborhood, we really targeted our efforts on the 6th and Euclid area. So it's a little historic commercial node that's there. Highland Park Bakery, Chuck's, Lachelle's is coming in. There's Des Moines Mercantile, several stores that you're probably all familiar with. But this was a nice consolidated little node that we could get into and be pretty impactful right away. So with the projects that we did, development-wise, we worked on the Des Moines Mercantile, did a facade treatment there, Highland Park Bakery. We expanded that space into a 2-suite little coffee shop and donut shop, obviously. And then the Chuck's restaurant had a complete rehab, and we also added 4 apartments upstairs, which is helping that business owner stabilize that real estate and help them with their business going forward. Beyond the development, we sometimes don't have funds into a project, but we can provide technical assistance. And so we've done that with the Lachelle's project that's going on in the Klein building. So that might be running financial projections with them, introducing them to lenders, tax credits, all sorts of resources that can help them get their projects across the finish line. Here are your after projects. The after shots, the Chuck's project Obviously, the top left to the right is the Des Moines Mercantile, that facade treatment. Lachelle's is bottom right. That is coming soon. And then the Highland Park Bakery, that expansion project. So before we started the work, the assessments in this area were $336,000 for these properties, and now we're at $1,336,000. And every dollar that we invested is equivalent to $24.83 in economic impact through wages, taxes, profits, and expenditures during construction. Beyond that, we've seen surrounding valuations increase 19 to 49%. So good impact there in a short amount of time. And it's continuing to redevelop. There isn't anything, we have people come to us all the time for space to lease or buildings to purchase, and they really are all kind of spoken for by the private market, which is great. So our work is somewhat done there, but we're still very present and continuing to make sure that our business owners are stable and that the property owners are stable as well. The next target area was Dogtown, the Drake neighborhood. This is one, we've been here for about 7 years. We focused on 2 areas here, up on Forest Avenue and then down on University Avenue, really the bookends of that neighborhood. And we're just trying to expand those, just a couple of more blocks in each direction. We've seen a lot of private investment and developers come into that neighborhood and invest there. So that is great, but we are still present there as well, trying to build up the remaining kind of edges of that neighborhood. So with that, we worked at the Forest Avenue corridor. That top left picture was 31st and Forest, as is the bottom right, just underutilized vacant spaces that we were able to repurpose. The Varsity Theater, we stepped in and assisted with that from a financial perspective. They worked on the development really themselves, but we helped them get that across the finish line with a guarantee. Essentially, we were able to step in and be that piece for them to get that project done. And then the former Crazy Horse Guitars, where our office is and Lucky Horse Restaurant is now. So here's those after pictures. That top left is that University or Forest Avenue, Lucky Horse, University Avenue. This is just at that east end of University, and then the Varsity Theater, obviously. So our post assessments here are $9.3 million. They started at $1 million. This does not include the $8 million project that we have underway, the former Come and Go site at 23rd and 4th, or University. So that project starts in the spring. And then every dollar that we invested equals about $24 to $37 of economic impact in the neighborhood. And those surrounding evaluations we've seen, single family and commercial, 16 to 49%, depending on the type of property. And Columbus Park, Indianola Hills. This one has been a great one for us as well for the city. This expanded our downtown really to the south, kind of took that downtown southern border of Principal Park and moved it across the river and brought housing and people living there, shopping there, all those sorts of things. The target areas, as you can see, was just south of the river, like I just said. But then we also continued down closer to Southeast 14th. There's a very successful, strong commercial node there at Southeast 14th and Indianola, and so this expands that kind of towards downtown, so hopefully they eventually meet in the middle is the plan. So with that, we had about 12 years ago completed the Madison Flats project and Jackson Crossing, and now the Park Indy Row homes. So these sites we had about a 5-acre city-owned lot there that the city wasn't using, some other underutilized properties there that we consolidated, and were able to do a large project there, just underutilized sites that we were able to repurpose. So pre-assessments here were about $979,000. Post-assessments are $44,285,000, and that does not include the $8.4 million project that we have underway on Indianola Avenue at Park. So that will be another $8.4 million impact for project investment in the neighborhood. So
Boy,
this
Abby,
one,
that's an awful big jump. You
It's a
sure
big
that's
number.
not a typo?
it's not a typo. I searched and researched. But thank you for asking, because it is quite substantial. Yeah, so Jackson Crossing was a large, and these are partnerships. Like, we've got to leverage our $1 million into these projects. We can't do them alone. So these are partnerships with private investors, private developers that help us get these done. So Madison Flats was one we did ourselves, but Park Indy Row Homes and then Jackson Crossing were partnerships with private money. Because that one would be, well, we're at 40, probably 270, just about. So with this, the economic impact, the dollar is equal to $13 because it is mostly housing. So we were trying to bring people down to this area so that the commercial nodes could be more prosperous. We would have people there. So I feel like that's the second phase that's coming, is we'll start to see some commercial redevelopment down there and filling of storefronts. I know there's some efforts at Southeast 6th and Hartford, some of those commercial buildings being purchased and redeveloped. So hopefully we'll start to see some of that commercial work coming in. No, it's sold. Yep. A lot of the properties we have, we do sell just to take those funds and reinvest in the next one. So those are the case studies. I just wanted to share the highlights kind of over the last 10 to 12 years. This year we did celebrate our 25th anniversary. So thank you for your continued support in us and keeping us going for so long. This year we focused, our planning efforts were at East 9th and Hull. That's an area near Granby University that we're focusing our efforts on and trying to acquire some parcels there to do a revitalization or some redevelopment projects, I should say, that will bring some commercial and housing to that little node. Riverview Park on the right is a concept plan that has a long way to go, but we at least have the property secured. We demolished a building there that could not be saved, a former warehouse building. So we have a nice 3-acre parcel sitting there just across the water from Riverview Park. So we're very excited about that one. We have some preliminary design, obviously, to at least show what a concept could look like there. But this winter is where we're really getting into the design drawings and hopefully starting this spring. So we secured a brownfield tax credit there, which will be very helpful. But we will apply for a workforce tax credit this spring and also some other grants that are in the community that will help us create more of a community space around the housing. And we have a restaurant user that we're working with there as well. That's going to be in the investment team. So excited for that one to come. 48th and Franklin, that one we have actually sold to our partners at InvestDSM. They're working on a beautiful concept there that will be great for the neighborhood. Dogtown, continue working there on 23rd and University, like I said. And Highland Park, really what we want to do is create some outdoor space between Chuck's and Klein as this small little 4 parking stall alleyway that we think could better serve the neighborhood as patio and outdoor space for all the businesses there. So, and a larger parking plan. So we'll keep working on those projects, but those are some of the things we've been planning this year and then moving them into development. Forest Avenue is the project to the left, that 2-story brick. This is going to be across from the former Jethro's at Forest. There's just one parcel left that we had available, and we're working with a private developer to do that. University Avenue, like I just spoke to, at 23rd University. Indianola Avenue, that's just below those row homes there. Hull Avenue, hopefully, if we can acquire some more ground, and then Riverview. And then we'll continue to stabilize Highland Park, Dogtown, and Indianola Hills. Those are the neighborhoods that we're present in and developing in, but want to stay present to make sure they have the connections and tools that they need to continue their redevelopment into the future. And this next year, we will be working on a new strategic plan and rolling out our rebrand. You can see that in the presentation. That is the rebrand, but it will be coming out in more materials. You'll see it more present over this next year. Develop the projects we just talked about at Hull, Riverview, Indianola, and Dogtown. And then we'll be working to identify and acquire new sites. We really have done a great job in stabilizing our portfolio. We were holding quite a bit of ground, but we've worked with a lot of private developers to move that ground into their hands to get it redeveloped. We still feel like we are meeting the mission and being impactful. We don't have to do it with our dollars so long as it still gets done and gets done thoughtfully with the partners that we appreciate working with. We feel like it's a success. So all that said, that's what I have for you today. Any questions? Okay.
That's fine. Go ahead.
My comment is thank you for everything that you've done. Sadie, the rest of your team, you guys have done a great job. I love things like this. To me, this is the best thing we can do to help our neighborhoods. It provides walkability. It's going to help everybody in the entire community. I've worked with you for multiple years now, starting years ago on a building that didn't work out for us, but fortunately everything is good there. But thank you. You guys do a great job and you're so helpful. And I think it's important to to mention that at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about you provide guidance. And I know that you personally have met with many people in the community and just offered your expertise. And that is valuable.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question
Yeah.
in terms of, I'm just curious, the interplay between the investment you make and other city investments. I know a number of those projects, like, do you have a sense which project were using TIF or abatement or other city tools that were kind of layered in the stack?
Yes, no, that's a great question. As I look back at these, some of these were at a time where we were doing the 10-year 100% abatement, and some are not. So some of the commercial will be on using that 10-year declining type schedule. I believe Chuck's did do a TIF because that will be privately owned through the Chuck's owner. Trying to think if Drake or Jackson Crossing, Madison Flats. Park is doing the middle housing tax abatement, so that one would come through that. We've also accessed Blitz on Blight dollars just to get sites even developable, just getting a lot of the, yeah. So it goes beyond just the initial investment that you make in us every year. I think, there are other resources we tap into. And thank goodness they're there because they wouldn't get done otherwise. So we appreciate that very much.
Anything else? If not,
Yes.
Just real quick for the former mobile home park,
Yeah.
how long did it take
Oh.
when Joe started bugging you about that to say, I don't know if they're out of the ground? project yet?
Yep.
So,
We're vertical.
just
About
real
it-
quick,
Yeah.
a swag.
About a year. We worked with each individual living there. We went door to door and understood each person's situation, how much time they were going to need. Some people needed 6 months, some people needed 2 weeks. And we offered them assistance. We found them new housing. So we worked with other partners that we have that have affordable units throughout the city. We even toured other trailer or mobile home parks, I should say, and found other homes for them to move into. So it really was a year's worth of our work that we spent working with those folks and then offering them assistance as well. We gave them rental assistance in their new locations, worked through Polk County on a grant with that to get them in a good place. So everyone seemed to be headed in the right direction. We didn't really have much pushback.
they were in pretty rough condition.
It was it was unlivable. I mean, we sat in people's living rooms and they would say, we don't know where to go. We don't know what to do.
Thanks.
And so we put them together with really great owners,
Housing options.
operators. Yeah.
Good.
So
Unlivable is a great
Unlivable
is a great description of the majority
Yeah.
of those trailers.
when there's holes and critters coming up to say hi every day, it's a little concerning. And it's cold. They were cold. At the time I was there, it was cold. So we spent a lot of time with everybody. It went as good as those things can go.
So great improvement. Thank you for the
Yeah.
work and
Well, thank you for your
making a
investment
difference in the
us.
communities because we know what difference it has made in many of these nodes. So
Good.
revitalization is what we're trying to get done here.
Absolutely.
And making it in a safe, livable housing. So
Yeah.
thank
Good.
you.
Well, we appreciate your investment in us. We'll continue to leverage those dollars the best we can and
Okay, thank you.
spread it around. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Abby. Angie, go ahead and come on up. Many of you have already heard pieces of this presentation. We, through our Homeward leadership, engaged Matt White as a consultant to do a gap analysis of the need for additional sheltering units, and this is the product that came out of that. So I'll turn it over to Angie.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity today. Said Angie Arthur with Homeward. We're the regional homelessness planning organization in Polk County. And we had the opportunity to bring in Matt White and also Shannon Quinn Sheeran with Housing Innovations to do work for us. We started in late 2023 and wrapped it up at the beginning of this year. You might be familiar with the name of Matt White. Matt White is also coming back into our community right now, starting in October through probably March of next year, to work on a 5-year strategic plan for us as a community regarding the homeless services that we have. So we're pleased to do that. One of the things that we wanted to do in the analysis for the gap analysis is like, what are those additional resources that we might need within the community to be able to accommodate all folks that are experiencing a housing crisis in a year time period? That was the modeling time frame that we looked at, ranging from support services to shelter to housing, those different things. Then we also looked at that concept of what are some of those efficiencies that we can look at within the system to move things forward. I'll move forward fairly quickly through the modeling section so we can look a little bit more from the data perspective. But in that, from a modeling outlook, we wanted to know what kind of project types, programs, resources that we currently have within our community, as well as how do folks flow within the system. Each household has a different pathway that they might go. It's individualized. And so what does that look like, and what are those different options that we have within the community? Also, who is utilizing those services? Singles, families, veterans, young adults, folks experiencing domestic violence. How are those folks, and who is utilizing those resources? And then also, what are some of those planning assumptions that we have? Those were based off of some industry standards, but also community conversations. There were various stakeholder meetings, so we can make sure that the assumptions we were making were accurate and accurately reflected what programs were new, what programs were maybe wrapping up, those different things along that line. So with that, we took that information, used data from our homeless management information system that service providers enter information into, as well as some community data that was shared to look at what are those inventory recommendations, cost projections, just various aspects from that perspective. And then within that, we looked at what is the optimal system. So basically, if we had enough resources in our community to meet folks' needs, what would that look like? And how can we quickly resolve folks' housing crisis? So that's when we look at the recommendations, we're looking at that optimal system. And then that was a comparison that we had about what does our current system look like versus the optimal system. So that's where you get that understanding of the gap analysis, or it's possible there could have been some additional resources that we might have. Unfortunately, that's not the case. There's only one or two type of things. We mainly have gaps within our resource systems. But also, once we have this information, what is it going to help us do? And it really lets us look at things from an investment perspective, directionally. How should we invest our funding within the community? Additional funding that we might have, is there any reinvestment that we might need to do within the community? Also wanted to share this piece of information. I've got a little additional handout here, if I might be able to do that, to share that with you. We talk about the program types. So what kind of system programs do we currently have? And I wanted to share this handout with you. On the front side of this handout, you'll see the same type of listing on this slide here, which is homeless prevention. What does that mean? Diversion. We have emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing. And then on the back side, you'll notice is it lets you know about who are the current service providers that we have in the community that are doing those kind of resources. So this is part of the analysis that we had within here in the community, is looking at those different types of transitional housing that we might have. One thing to note is when we have the other side handout on the other side is to note that that is as of last Friday, and please know that there's programs that end and begin, so that is as of to date, and it will likely change as we go through the upcoming year. But it gives you an idea of who do we have in the community doing those resources, and what do those kind of type of resources look like. So we wanted to make sure that we share that with you. The other thing that we talked about from a modeling perspective are some of those other housing resources that are important for us in the community to have, but maybe don't directly relate to one of those type of housing programs. One thing is something called housing-focused case management. And from that perspective, it's like, what are those individualized conversations that you're going to have with a household to be able to move forward and remove those housing barriers that they might have, connect them with the resources that we have in the community. It can be such things as a mediation conversation, diversion, connecting with legal aid. It could be housing resources. It's a variety of different things. It could be something comparable as to connecting them with their birth certificate so they can get their ID back. I mean, it's a variety of those different things. So what are those needs that we have? And are those kind of conversations, how are they happening in the community, and who are the service providers, and who are the entities that are doing those type of programs? The other thing that we wanted to note within the modeling itself is other housing programs. What are different programs that maybe aren't funded through federally or through local specific programs, but it could be, again, market rate housing, increasing the affordable housing that we have within our community. It could be subsidized housing, public housing, housing vouchers. We talk about Section 8 vouchers, things along that line. It could be shared housing, worker dorms. What does that look like? Reunification. There's all sorts of different kind of other programs that we have within the community. We wanted to take those all into consideration with the work that we're doing. The next slide shows you the different housing pathways. I mentioned that folks go through the system in various ways. And so the important thing to note, these are some of the pathways that were evaluated within the process. But if you look at it from a color gradation, you'll notice the lighter colors are the things that take less resources. As we go through the process and look down through the list, the darker colors, those are those housing resources that are important in our community, but they take more investment from a resource perspective and a time perspective. And so just to understand that that's part of the impact too that we have within here. You know, I'm kind of flying through the assumption portions of it, but I'm happy to answer more questions later, but I want to make sure that we get to the numbers section that we have coming up here. We also made some program assumptions. There are some folks that maybe just need some modest supports and needs, and typically that's maybe a little prevention dollars, emergency shelter, some diversion dollars. Then there are going to be households that are going to need more supports. They have additional barriers, maybe had some short-term homelessness. So that's what we would need to maybe have some additional transitional housing or maybe some housing navigation and supports from that perspective. Then you're going to see more intensive needs in households, and they're going to need, maybe they'll need short-term rental assistance from up to 2 years. Or maybe it's someone that has long-term needs or chronic homelessness, and they're going to need that permanent supportive housing with supportive resources for multiple year time frame. So again, those are some of those resources and assumptions that we've made through the process. So as we go to the next page, we want to talk about the pathways. How are folks utilizing our system in our community? And we looked at things from singles and young adults to families, and we did those comparisons. So when you look at some of the numbers, when you talk about those lighter touches, those less resources that we have within the community from homeless prevention, diversion, and emergency shelter only, you see about 59% of singles and young adults resolve their homelessness through those tools there, as compared to about 62% of families. So again, sometimes it's just a little bit of lower level support that folks might need to be able to resolve their housing crisis. And then when you look at things from a perspective of those larger needs of supports or permanent supportive housing, and with that definition that we utilize, that the individuals that receive those services have a disability and typically are chronically homeless. There are some families that may not have that chronic homelessness, and we have a program for youth that don't require chronic homelessness. But again, those are folks that are struggling with long-term issues. But you'll see from a single perspective that 22% of the folks served within our community need that level of support, as opposed to 10% from families. Again, all those type of things are taken into account when we looked at those resources for how things are being utilized within our community and what type of supports that we need to do.
And when you say community, you mean the entire region, not just Des Moines.
Correct. Polk
Okay.
County. We looked at the entire
Awesome.
region.
All of Polk
all
County?
of Polk County, yes.
Okay.
Polk County specifically. One thing we also took into account, for example, when you think about differences between families and singles, for the average length of stay for single individuals within the emergency shelter system is 60 days. And when we look at that for families, it's 120 days. So again, we wanted to take those things into consideration. Also lets you know about the challenges it probably is when you have particularly larger families looking for apartments of 3 and 4 bedrooms. That's a challenge within the system. So we'll move on to some of the numbers. And to let you know what we see within, we broke it down into your prevention slots or resources that we have. So 1 slot would equal serving 1 household, as well as for emergency shelter units and permanent supportive housing units and rapid rehousing units. You can see with our singles, and this is a need within a 1-year time period. You can look at that and see the significant gaps that we have for our singles and young adults populations has to do with rapid rehousing. So that's those programs where the household will receive rental assistance for up to a 2-year time period. Typically is 1 year, but it could be up to 2 years. And you see a significant gap for permanent supportive housing units, over 500, so 523 permanent supportive housing units. On the next slide, on slide 13.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
The third column is the difference.
yes.
Okay.
So
See the
the,
523.
mhm.
Is primarily, where would you say it's located
For,
for all these categories? Emergency shelter, transitional
Right.
housing, rapid rehousing.
so emergency shelter, that's going to be Central Iowa Shelter Services, Hope Ministries, your 2 family shelters, and Iowa Homeless Youth Shelter for your resources. So
So that's Des Moines.
that's, yes, those
Okay.
those were there. The,
No other part of those.
for the emergency shelters at this time, yes. Now, your rapid rehousing and your permanent supportive housing, sorry.
You said at this time as if you knew something. Do you know anything?
No, I don't.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
leaving the
So it's just the
possibility
one.
open,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Well, I think when we look at here is, that need of having additional shelter and family shelter, I mean, we would like to have those things implemented, right? And so what does that look like? And we're open and obviously work with the entire county. Your rapid rehousing and your permanent supportive housing
What's the biggest?
are all over the community. Where the service providers might be located, they might be primarily located in Des Moines, but they do work with property managers across the county. So it varies.
You know how many not in Des Moines then? Since you say that they work with other property owners, how many of those are not in Des Moines?
I do not know the answer to that
That'd be
question.
a good, I'd like to know that answer.
Okay.
When you have some
Yeah.
time.
Well, and it's going to vary, right? Because it depends upon where the family is located. If they're currently located in West Des Moines, they'll want to stay in
Sure.
West Des Moines and things along that line.
I'd like to know which communities and how many are being used in the other parts of the county, other than Des Moines.
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
I mean, I have a question. So permanent supportive housing units, if they're currently 48 and the proposed system is 570, that means we're less than 10% of the overall need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that was proportional, every community doing proportional of their share.
Yeah, and that's availability, right? That's how units are available to us. It's maybe not the total number count of units.
Sorry,
One more time?
I don't.
There
Okay.
could be more units available, that this is what's available.
Right. So there might be, okay, so for permanent supportive housing, we have approximately 240 units, right? But with turnover and people moving out and things along that, that's the availability that we have open to us.
Okay, so you're talking availability, not the total number.
Yes,
So we
sorry.
might have a lot more units, it's just that you have
Okay.
people in those
Yes.
houses.
The annual turnover
Right.
rate.
The amount that become vacant over any given year is 48.
You're right, correct.
And is the 571 the amount that you need vacant over any given year, or is that total number of units?
That's the need,
So that's the total need.
yes.
So does that mean that the difference is actually less than what you are presenting? So if there are
No.
248 units,
Right,
Or
but
two.
they're filled.
I understand. So is the proposed system, you need 570 that are available on an annual basis? Or do you need,
The 523 is what is needed. That's the gap between the current,
right, but I'm trying to understand
sorry.
if it's an availability, because
You need 300.
like, I'm a little confused by what you just said. So,
I apologize for that confusion.
so there are that current annual availability. So when you go to permanent supportive housing, what I heard you say is that there's a need for at least 48, or the annual availability is 48 that are open in any given year, but there are another 200 some
Sorry.
that exist that are filled regularly and aren't turning over, right?
Right,
So that's like a total of, if you were counting what is filled and not turning over, there'd be like 250. Am I understanding that correctly?
approximately, yes.
So what I'm trying to understand is the proposed system, the 571, does that include the 48 plus the 200 and then a new 230? Or is it, because the 200 that are filled aren't in that current annual availability, are they in the proposed system? Because the gap seems to indicate they are not, that there are 200 units that someone is sitting in that's not counted as something that's new or needed, right? Like, that's above and beyond what people are in that might not turn over. And Amy is nodding and saying that's correct.
Yeah. And that was explained to me that way as well in the earlier presentation, is that the 200 being used are not in that 571 that's.
Right,
Right. So there's actually more that exist in the community
yes,
than
sorry.
the 48.
Like the YMCA has.
Yeah.
And understand that permanent supportive housing is, like it says, permanent. And so if we can attain these additional 523 units, we expect that number would then not repeat year after year. Whereas you do have repeating numbers and the need for shelter
Right,
and the more temporary,
Right.
right? And so we say annual, but you really need to think this is a need that we would be placing them in permanent housing.
Right.
And hopefully it doesn't grow a lot beyond that. This is
If you
not
have that many-
we don't have to create 500 permanent supportive housing units today and another 500 next year.
Right.
Once you
These-
have them.
Once
you
we
would
have that
Yes.
number should go down.
And our hope is
It
that-
doesn't go to zero.
investments in, our hope is investments in prevention and diversion and things along that line. If we can invest more on that end, and if we can prevent people from becoming
Even getting
chronically
into it.
homeless,
Okay.
that I think will help us in the long term.
I think the other thing on the big number at the bottom is it's the supportive that we generally are missing. Our community has a lot of units, but they aren't in that program for support, case management, and so it's the service that we're meeting, which requires far less capital and a reallocation of the expenses that we already have in the system.
So like the YMCA supportive housing, that's about 140 units, right?
Right. And that would be considered part of that other permanent housing program category that would be doing some of that work within our community.
Already doing it.
Already doing that work, yes. Yes.
So will you be able to, I'm sure you can list out all the permanent supporting housing units throughout our entire region, whether that be West Des Moines, Altoona, Pleasant Hill. You'll be able to send that to us, wouldn't you?
I think so. I'll have to look from that perspective because I don't know how the addresses are recorded within the system. If it's like a narrative field, we'll have to look from that perspective.
I think that those would be good data to have for everyone in the entire region.
I think that should be part of the whole study is that
Yes.
if we need 520, if we need more 500 units, where are they at? I assume that would be then if, like Des Moines has 36% of the population, then how does it all balance out between if that's going to be part of the report so that we get a better understanding of what every community really actually has? And that's, I think, one thing we've talked about in MAC is to get where's the affordability at, where are the apartments, where are the houses, so we can get a better understanding of where the need is to have a good support system for all areas, whether it be Des Moines, Altoona, West Des Moines. I mean, so where you have shopping areas or where you have business centers, it all goes back to how do you have housing close to the business centers and support the people in the communities where they live.
And we can definitely do that from a perspective of the programs that we have. When you're looking at overall affordability, it might go a little bit beyond our scope of.
Well, I'm not saying necessarily, I didn't know if he was looking at all that. So
Okay.
that and even from a MAC perspective, I think we were trying to come together with how much is the need and whether it be the supportive services, we aren't maybe more of that, but it's more affordability, I think was part of it.
Angie, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and your organization of all have the big picture. What I'm hearing the council say is you are establishing the benchmarks for the reporting process for years to come. And we'd like to see the total numbers so
Right.
that as each year progresses, we have a benchmark of where we are, and it will reveal how many people we're reaching. Where this current table doesn't do that, so we're just asking you to expand that.
Sure.
I think,
Or Matt to work with you on expanding it and put it in a format that will help us in the years to come understand where we are and where we need.
understanding.
Throughout the entire region.
Sure.
So not just Des Moines.
That's why I think
And
it's
this is
Right.
definitely focusing, our focus is the entire region.
But-
Yeah.
So to
Okay.
piggyback on Joe's question, are we the first council that you've presented this to?
Yeah, we presented it to various entities. I think you're the first full
City
council.
But are you planning to present this to the other city councils in the region?
I guess we haven't really had that conversation.
But-
I think
but
we're
I
open
guess
to that, but I think.
Part of how this came about was, I I requested this as part of our discussion on homelessness. I mean, I don't know that there are other, there are some, I mean, some folks are, willing to make drastic changes to their policy and keep their head in the sand. I mean, there are communities that have done that, but I wanted us to have a full picture as we're trying to comprehensively address this issue. It's not about, I mean, we can worry about what other communities are or are not doing, but we're engaging on these issues. And if we're engaging on these issues, we should be as informed as possible and have as much data as possible and understand the full need of the system. And that's why I thought it was important that we have this presentation and set this baseline.
But having the full need of the entire system is also knowing what else is out there in the system, not just
so that we can
What-
effectively
Right.
handle our
this.
portion.
This is everything from public transit, affordable housing everywhere. I mean, this touches all of that, and this could be really helpful for us to know how many supportive housing units are in the rest of the county, not just in Des Moines. I mean, this is really important data that you can get for us that will help our entire region.
Well, it gives us a basis of what the city of Des Moines needs to do.
Right.
Right?
And,
So-
and this information is also being used within the 5-year strategic
Right.
plan. This
Right.
is basis of information for that
Right.
as well.
Well,
That's important, but I think
It's not.
it would be informative if the other cities in Polk County, the councils
Mhm.
knew about this, especially if some of it's in their own community,
I think
a
all,
sliver here and
And we-
there.
so go ahead.
Mayor, one of the other questions I've had council ask me privately, and I think this would be helpful to the inventory list.
Mhm.
These are the housing units, and we talk about how important the supportive aspect of the services being provided.
Right.
We also need to know the inventory of those providers, like where they operate, what capacities do they have? Are they isolated where they can only provide those services in Des Moines? We need to know that information as well, because there's some capacity building that's going to need to happen within those nonprofits.
Most definitely.
And so we know that there are gaps, but it'd be helpful to understand how many units each of those nonprofits could serve. If that makes sense? From a
Yes.
supportive housing.
Yes, and I think a lot of it has to do with the current funding and where it's coming from and the connections from that perspective.
And that's fine. Again, it's a baseline. What can they do today? And then are they willing, if capacity is built, to grow into these needs? Because it's one thing to have the housing units identified, but it's a completely another challenge to have trained professionals in the nonprofit world, not city employees. Let me be clear about that, that have the capacity then to provide that service. So we need to know those numbers too.
We can have those conversations with our current service providers, but I
Yeah.
think it's an opportunity too to look at, excuse me, maybe new service providers or maybe some culturally specific service providers. I know we've run into some barriers with the current funding that we have in some of our programs that require a 25% match by the service providers, and that becomes a barrier, particularly for new organizations to become involved, maybe new to us organizations. Maybe they've done the work for a long time within the community, but not connected with the homeless services, and that investment is a barrier.
Just wondering if that's part of the whole gap. Was that originally part of the gap analysis, is the gap of what providers can provide?
Not at this time.
Okay. It probably is a kind of a critical part.
Sure.
Who can really help support the need of the people that we're trying to serve?
And where are they located?
Yeah. More to do there, Andy. Add to the list.
Just a little bit. All right. Well, move on very quickly to families. I think the important thing to note is that we do have need, obviously, for prevention and diversion, but it's the significant gap in emergency shelter units. We know that is a concern for us within the community. We have a significant amount of folks that are currently on the wait list for a family emergency shelter, and a significant number of folks that have been housed temporarily through Polk County through the hotel system. So again, a significant need for us and additional needs in permanent supportive housing as well.
Because of the number of people within the unit. Usually, what is the average number in the unit of a family that you see? Is there an average or?
It's very hard
Very-
because
okay.
we've over this last year seen an influx of large families of 6 to 8 and that family members that we've had. So it's quite varied.
Multi-generation.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. We had grandparent and parent and grandchildren, and one that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay.
When you look at the overall recommendations, again, primary recommendations have to do with that urgent need for family emergency shelter. We have 2 current family emergency shelters that we have in the community with 18 total units. So that lets you know that we need to more than double the capacity that we currently have. Expanding rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing options for single adults critically, as we see those more significant numbers there. And institute housing-focused case management for all persons experiencing homelessness within the Oldborough system. So having those conversations about what steps need to move forward to be able to help folks become housed. So we're going to share the third sheet, which talks about the dollar amount. And you'll see it's a significant dollar amount. When you look at the gap between family and individuals and the different resources, it's almost $20 million on an annual basis. We know that that's not going to be made up tomorrow. Within that, this is going to take investments on a federal level. This is going to take more investments on a state level. I've shared probably before, and you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but the state of Iowa puts 5% of the real estate transfer tax to the Shelter Assistance Fund. 2023, we don't have the 24 numbers, I'm not sure why, but 2023, that was $1.3 million, and it was shared with me that it's projected in 2025 to be $1.4 million for the entire state.
Entire state.
Yes. And I think we receive in the community, this is a guesstimate off the top of my head, about 20% of those funds. So not a significant investment. We're not going to say no to it, right? We need that investment in our community, but we need to have more expansion within that from a state perspective. And additionally, it's crisis response that they're investing and not housing stabilization. So there's other opportunities that they could do some investments. So you'll see that the largest dollar amount is that permanent supportive housing cost, and that's because it is more intensive in long-term services. So it gives you an idea of the resources that we have. And I think when we work with our 5-year strategic plan coming up, that we have opportunities to talk about other resources outside of federal and state resources and private resources as well. So those will be some of those conversations that we'll have in that work.
No shortage of need.
That is accurate.
Is there any other questions? Does anyone have?
A second, go back to Josh's question. I think if you added a column to that form, I was tracking what Josh was saying
Okay.
about the numbers, which is what do we have existing
Okay.
that's the total, because I do think that different rows speak differently to the numbers,
Mhm.
and so clearing that up I think would help.
Okay.
So.
We can add that.
Anything else? If not, thank you, Angie.
Thank you for the
presentation
opportunity.
and giving us an update on where the gaps are and give us a better understanding of the need within this metro area.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll have you back.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to,
So we have one more item on the list. We'll have the OED staff come forward. Brianne and Nick have been working diligently with our smaller businesses in a lot of regards. One of the programs they're going to speak to this morning is an opportunity for a loan, a small loan business scenarios. I'll turn it over to them.
Hey, Council. So I know we've sat in front of all of you individually, talk about the microloan program that we are adopting and rolling out as 2025 opens up. We also wanted to take the time, just as 2024 comes to a close, to talk a little bit about what we've been doing. So we've been on the job about almost 9 months now or so, and so we wanted to summarize our activities and talk about what we're thinking about doing in 2025, and then give a review of the microloan program just to rehash it. As we know, it'll be rolling out early next year, and we want people to be informed and kind of up to date on how that's going to go. So, summary of what we do. We're calling ourselves a Small Business Support Center. Generally, what we do in our day-to-day, so at the top, we really try to help small businesses navigate the intersections with city processes. So that can mean zoning, permits, licenses, interfacing with city staff, where to start at the city. A lot of times, the city can be this kind of big, opaque thing that people don't necessarily know how to handle or deal with. We can be people's first contact and help them step into the water of working with the city. We help people get access to resources. So a lot of people ask, what's a resource? That could be technical assistance. So NDC talked a little bit earlier. A lot of times, small businesses will utilize them for a lot of maybe reviewing a lease or talking about a business plan or things like that. Or we can help people access financial resources. So there's a lot of other nonprofit financial players that work in the region and in the state that we can connect people to. So that term resource is very broad, but we are making a lot of connections with the resource providers in the metro area. We also collaborate with other departments that have projects that impact small businesses. So maybe that's engineering or public works. And so we can really help be an interface or a liaison between those departments and our small business community. And then something that's been really exciting is we've been making a lot of connections with our procurement office and helping small businesses access them as a business development tool. So whether that's through ION or just our larger procurement office and kind of our more day-to-day procurement tasks, we can help small businesses scale and develop new lines of business through that. So our first 9 months, a little bit more specifically, what we've been doing, a lot of it has just been letting people know that we're here. So that's going out, meeting with people, going to community events, going to business events, non-business events, and really just telling people, hey, we're located in the Office of Economic Development. We're here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but we're also here at other times as well. And so letting people know that we are a service that the city offers for free. We've been identifying a lot of city processes that small businesses go through. So whether that's a certain type of permit process or maybe it's a specific type of license that they need to run their business, really just kind of doing an inventory of all of those things. And then within those processes, what are the barriers? What are the common hangups that people are having? Is there a way that we can think about maybe trying to reformulate some of these processes? Relatedly, small businesses, they turn to a lot of people when they get stuck or discouraged in the process. So maybe that's a super informal community resource, a person that just, maybe they've been working with the city for a while and they kind of know how to get through it and they turn to them. Or maybe it's somebody super formal. They might have a coach at the SBDC that they access and they talk to and they go to for more formal types of advice. We've been relatedly trying to get more plugged into the existing small business ecosystem in the city. So whether that be with our friends at Iowa Microloan that do small business loans, or maybe it's our friends over at the SBA, really trying to understand who does what in the game. Because we don't want to try to recreate anything, but we want to be able to support the existing infrastructure that's there. And then a lot of these other professionals that are working in these environments, they have ideas on maybe what to fix or what's working and what's not. And so it's really good to talk to them to understand how they view the ecosystem and how they view small businesses going through city processes. And then relatedly, we're trying to identify gaps in a lot of those resources. So what does everybody do? How do they do it well? What do they not do? How can the city step in? And so we're doing a lot of analysis of that. And then relatedly, if after we've identified these gaps, how can we develop partnerships or programs of our own to fill them? So in 2024, here's what we've done. So we've done a lot of, like we said, a lot of outreach, a lot of talking to people. So about 450 meetings with individual community resource partners, lenders. So we know there's a lot of lenders that work in the commercial space that interact with small businesses. It's really good to hear their perspective on the financing of small businesses. Real estate brokers, small businesses themselves. So really a lot of people that intersect or touch that small business ecosystem. We launched a small business website a few months ago, dsm.city/smallbusiness. We have also launched what we're calling our Small Business Minute monthly newsletter. It's kind of like a news magazine that we launched that really spotlights small businesses, details what we're doing, has access to technical resources and assistance. It's pretty rich, and so we do get a lot of positive feedback on that. We've been going to a lot of events or workshops that other entities are putting on. So whether that's the Greater Des Moines Partnerships Business Incubator programs, or maybe Drake Accelerator, they have their own business development program. And so we've been going to these different events, popping in, but also having our own content and coming and being speakers and lecturers at those events. And that's a really good way for us to build some strong foundations with existing as well as new businesses in our community. We've been hosting what's called Small Business Connect. That's a quarterly event where businesses can come together and network in a really informal way. So we've been hosting those at different businesses around town. We also pick up our books and we walk around different neighborhoods and talk to small businesses themselves. So we pop in, say hi, and really just ask how things are going. So we've been doing a lot of that in different geographies around the city. We launched our Small Business Impact Loan, which is our small business focused financial assistance program. So that's going to be going online, coming in early 2025, but we spent a lot of the fall really formulating that. We had an outreach event a couple weeks ago with commercial real estate brokers. So bringing a lot of those brokers into the room and letting them know who we are, what we do, what kind of services and assistance that the city can offer their clients, and really trying to be a better bridge to that community. Because we know a lot of small businesses, that's going to be their first contact, especially when they're looking for a brick and mortar space. And then also we're developing small business resource guides or checklists. We know that those aren't going to capture every scenario, but we do know having something in a really simple, easy to read format is going to be a really big benefit for small businesses. So relatedly, how can we build off that? 2025, I think one of the first things that we'll be working on, I think many of the people in here know a lot of times how businesses maybe first interface with the city is they go through what's called a pre-application process or a pre-application meeting. And that's an informal meeting with multiple city staff. If somebody's thinking about buying a building or buying land, what are the things that I have to do from a city's perspective to be able to open up? And we know a lot of times that that process is not always user-friendly for small businesses. And so we're working with our other colleagues and our other city departments to think about how we can reformat that to make that a little bit friendlier for small businesses. And then also just generally thinking, like I talked about earlier, there's a lot of processes in general that small businesses have to go through at the city. And so what can we do to work with our colleagues to maybe reformat or reformulate some of these things to maybe make it a little bit easier? Also, like I said earlier, finalizing a lot of these business development guides, so maybe for specific types of businesses, having specific guides of, hey, I want to open a restaurant. Here are the 8 things that you might have to be thinking about from a municipal or a regulatory perspective that will help you move forward. And then relatedly, diagrams or guides for specific processes, so zonings or conditional uses or food trucks, kind of these big hulking things that small businesses, they might need a 6 or 8 step-by-step guide to help them conceptualize that a little bit easier. Also, as many people know, early next year, we're anticipating rolling out a new city website. And so how can our small business portion of that website be more interactive, maybe having like an events calendar or have just additional information that can be more of a resource guide for small businesses. And then we're going to have a lot of programming for Small Business Week. So the city, we've recognized it before in proclamations, and we have celebrated it before, but we are really planning on having some more intentional programming. So that'll be the last week of April next year. Really working with a lot of our resource partners to develop more of a holistic program for that. We also want to engage home-based businesses. So we know that brick and mortar isn't necessarily the only way that somebody can be in business. We have a lot of home-based businesses in Des Moines, and they can range from a whole host of things. And so we want to engage them better and understand what their needs are too. We also want to explore additional grant funding or just general funding opportunities for small business programming. So whether those be federal or public dollars, and we can write applications and try to secure monies that way, or maybe we can engage the private community in Des Moines as well. And so how can we think about that and be a little bit more creative with that? And then also just kind of an ongoing thing is just adding to the calendar of our external events or conferences or outreach opportunities that we have. So whether that's more business accelerator events, more entrepreneurs type events, what is the events calendar looking like in 2025 and how can we be there and be in the room and people can meet us? So I know we've all talked about impact loan with each of you before, so we're going to review that, just talk about some of the program fundamentals and how we developed it. So small business impact loan, really the way that it came about or the focus of it is it's a targeted financial investment for businesses that face maybe a regulatory or industry specific hurdle. So they can't maybe grow, expand, or scale their business, and there's a hurdle that's impacting that. This is really a bridge the gap type of program. So maybe a business can't qualify for existing traditional or bank financing, and we want to try to help prepare them for a traditional banking relationship. This is an alternative to maybe a traditional commercial loan that somebody might walk into U.S. Bank and ask about. And then in addition to this being a financial incentive program, we also are viewing this as a business development tool. So this is really a way for them, through a lot of the application requirements, for them to mature their business and develop and to think about it in a more long-term way than maybe they do right now. It's also a way for small businesses to get connected with technical assistance, so that could be us, but that's also our resource partners in the community like the SBDC and the SBA. This is really a program that's intended to promote small business ownership and entrepreneurship that positively impacts the community. So what are the kind of uses that we want to see in our neighborhoods? This program supports that. It also supports diversity in our small business community, and really this is a program that intended to help brick and mortar spaces. And so how can we support the occupation of vacant or underutilized spaces through city dollars? Why this model? So we've spoken, like we said, to about 450 individuals, whether that's a resource partner or a small business themselves, or maybe it's a commercial broker that works in the city. What are the barriers that small businesses are facing, specifically from a financial lens, and how can the city better fill that gap? So we have really found that reimbursement programs, while they exist, and we have one of our own, NCR, it's worked great. A lot of times that's a challenge for small businesses because it's reimbursement. They need capital up front to get over the hump and to fill that gap. A lot of businesses, they may not have a bank account or they're underbanked and they don't necessarily have a concept or familiarity with business banking. And so traditional financing and walking into US Bank or Bank of America just is not going to be a good fit for them. And then also, a lot of the micro products that we see in the region, they're really large. And so our smallest businesses that might be looking to scale up from the food truck or move out of their home and hire an employee, they're just not going to be equipped to deal with some of those amounts. And so there was a need for something smaller that came online. And really, the other thing I want to emphasize as well is that we didn't just create this program in a vacuum. We analyzed a lot of peer cities, so not just cities in the metro or in the region, but really what we maybe think of as our competitors geographically and demographically. So cities that have similar population size that are around the country, a lot of times they have small business assistance programs, so we tried to choose bits and pieces of what we liked from them and what we thought worked well in talking with them. And then also, after listening to members of our own community, what we think would work well here and what the need was.
Good morning. All right, here's a reinforcement of some of the fundamentals that we've discussed in our individual conversations. So this is a small dollar revolving loan program. Awards will be between $5,000 to $20,000. We have $100,000 allocated this year from Economic Development Enterprise Funds, so not out of the general fund. So we'll be looking at between 5 to 20 contracts essentially for this first pilot round of the program. We have a repayment period of 3 to 5 years depending on the size of the project. And there is an interest rate because it is a loan, and we want our small businesses to understand that loans come with requirements and parameters. But we also certainly want to provide a lower interest rate than prime because getting interest is not the primary purpose of the loan, but again, using this more as a business development tool. Obviously, our small businesses, they have to be in Des Moines geography. This is a citywide program, but special investment districts are ineligible or proposed special investment districts because we already have a lot of great tools that are going into those special investment districts, and we need some additional tools in other parts of the city. As we've noted, home-based pop-up mobile style vendor businesses are not eligible, but we certainly, as we get conversations, this will help us identify who they are, what their needs are, and better understand as how our work and our programs moving forward might be able to better support them. We are focused on truly small businesses, so there's an eligibility cap of 20 full-time equivalent employees. And then, as noted, a business development tool. So they have to deal with me and Nick. They get us as part of their support structure for the period of their loan, but then also we're connecting them with resource providers throughout the community. There has to be a project for the small business impact loan. They can't just come in and say, "Gosh, I'd like $15,000." Well, what are you going to do with it? So we have defined eligible uses of the funds. On the left side are some of the kind of hard stuff that we might think of, some of which our neighborhood commercial revitalization program also covers, but thinking about tenant improvements, building renovations, stabilization, exterior site improvements, did they need a site plan and now they need to do some sidewalk work, trees, et cetera. But also their inventory, getting new inventory into their business. With the impact loan, we're also allowing professional design services and some other soft costs to be eligible. So we understand that there are requirements sometimes to work with an architect, with a landscape architect, to go through our city processes. This is a source of funds where someone can come in and get some assistance with that. Working capital, real estate acquisition, if they're preparing to purchase a property, but they don't quite have, and this could get them to the point where they're able to acquire that property. But then also website and marketing as well. So thinking about the digital age, we've certainly learned a lot of lessons during COVID, and small businesses need to be resilient. We do have a list of ineligible business types and uses of funds. Primarily the ineligible business types, we're already seeing the private market take care of these businesses. They're kind of doing fine on their own. We're seeing them pop up. It's not something that we as a city need to really incentivize to see more of them. And then over on the right side, the items in bold. So those are ineligible uses of funds. Operating costs, rent, utilities, payroll. They've got to be already covering that themselves. A loan is not an appropriate tool for that. existing debt obligations, we're not a refi organization, and then self-performed work or sweat equity. We get that our small business owners, they're constantly investing in themselves through that sweat equity, but at the same time, we're not paying them to do that. We're supporting their provision of that service through professionals. Application requirements, I won't go through all of these, but just know that we have looked very diligently at programs throughout the country and at what the requirements are for the SBA-funded microloan programs. They are loans, so we do want to see appropriate documentation of business stability, or for a new business, a really solid business plan with tangible profit and loss or projections, certainly. We will require a personal guarantee. They also have to demonstrate that they can't access these funds through traditional lending sources. So if they could walk into a bank and get a loan for this project, that's the best path for them. But we also understand that a lot of banks in our area don't really lend for projects under around $100,000, at least not right now. There are some exciting conversations that we're having with banks as they start talking with us about how they might actually adapt their own small business banking products locally, which is great. We'll look forward to giving you an update on that in the future. And then also requesting a good neighbor agreement that's required by state code. It was required that we provide a bonus, a boost, if they submit a good neighbor agreement. That can be between a neighborhood association, adjacent property owners, and we've created a template so that hopefully that part of the process can be as useful for our neighborhoods and our corridors as it is for the small business themselves. We want to help, develop relationships between different entities. So scoring criteria, we're going to want to see a really solid project description and use of funds. They need to demonstrate that they're meeting city code or there's some other kind of challenge for their scaling or their business creation, filling vacant space, job creation, retention. We want to know about them. What's their experience? What brought them to this moment of their business? And how is that relevant? And how can we really feel confident that this is a good loan that we're making? That financial information that we talked about, and then also what we're calling an impact statement. That's where they can tell their story. Our small business owners, we want to help them become great storytellers because that's so important in today's day and age. But we want to help them through the application process, be able to make their case through this impact statement. And then on the next slide, we have these target investment criteria. These are some essentially scoring boosts. You get an extra point or two for meeting some of these items. So if you have 10 or fewer full-time equivalent employees, if you can document that you're creating jobs, not just retaining, located in a low mod census tract, located in a priority small business development corridor, and then thinking about where city CIP projects are happening or have happened within the last 3 years, and then a boost for proposing to occupy a vacant or underutilized commercial space. We certainly want to see that targeted throughout the city, some additional support for that. And then also some diversity boosts, making sure that we're investing in the diversity of our small businesses. And then we will award some extra points for businesses who can demonstrate that they're already taking advantages of all the resources, or at least some of the resources that we have in our community. Maybe they've taken a few classes through the Iowa Center for Economic Success. Maybe they have a SCORE coach, etc. So the process right now, we're out there, we're at neighborhood association meetings, we're at the chamber, we're making presentations left and right, really trying to get out information about this new program. In January, we'll have a pre-qualification period. That's a time where small businesses can fill out a simple form that helps us review the essentials of their application and say, yep, that looks eligible, move forward, or no, let's have another conversation. How else can we support you? So that pre-qualification period will be great for building relationships, regardless of whether an applicant might move forward. Late January, we'll let them know whether they can move forward to February. That full application opens up, and then March and into April, review and scoring, and then contract negotiation, not negotiation, but finalization and distribution of funds. So here's a summary of our outreach. I won't go into all of this because, as just noted, we have really been out there on the streets, in the neighborhoods, on the corridors, working with our partners to really try to get this information out there. But here's a lot of what we've been doing since the program launched in early October. And all of the information about the program is already online on the Small Business Impact Loan website, so that everyone can see the guidelines and all the forms and prepare themselves right now. Any questions for us?
I'll open this up. Does any of the council have questions?
So, go ahead.
At a bunch of neighborhood meetings, it's been really well received, and the efforts that you're making means a lot. I want the program to succeed in all of it. I think it's also good that we're just on the side of small businesses and showing people that, and your extra effort in being public and out is demonstrating that. It's really important. Thank you.
So $100,000, is that what's going into from the enterprise? Okay. And both of you will be running the program, giving
Yeah.
out the $100,000?
We will not be scoring the applications, so we'll have an internal team, interdepartmental team that will be looking at the applications. Nick and my role is really we're assistance providers. We want to be small business cheerleaders, make sure that we have that trust, and then also help them fill out the applications as well. We understand that we're going to be working with some small businesses who maybe haven't applied for a loan before. So what do some of these terms mean, and how can we get them ready?
And what I've heard you kind of say is when we go through the pre-app,
Mm-hmm.
there's some additional costs that some small business owners don't necessarily realize when they're going into an existing building.
They may not anticipate.
And so
yes.
this is kind of a gap funding for that. And as I look to our city manager and other staff members and you guys,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we need to look at the current policy so we're not using tax dollars to loan people dollars to figure out what our code's supposed to be. Maybe we need to all take a look at that for some of these existing buildings, like I think I've said probably 100 times sitting here, instead of taking tax dollars and loaning it to businesses that you said yourself maybe have never applied for a loan, which I don't know how confident I am giving someone a loan for whatever the case may be, if you haven't ever applied for the loan. And you need to have a personal guarantee. I mean, I'm not sure how that's
I think
how that's going to
I mean,
work.
those are important questions that we have sought to balance because we see that there is an unmet need in the community. We know that these are limited funds at this point. We're piloting this. We're going to learn as we go,
Sure.
certainly. But we're also, we're not certainly just focused on maybe what some of those, like a site plan drawing, just that as an eligible use. That's among a variety of eligible uses. In terms of, I think, the strength of the application, I would say small businesses, they have to start with their first loan application somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the way that we've structured this and the support that we're providing as a city with that, relationship building and helping them through the process, ideally that will help prepare them to be solid borrowers moving into the future, and their business further stabilize. We're looking at credit repair for this as well. So how can we make sure that the payments, every successful repayment, that we're reporting them to the credit agencies so that they can build back their credit score and become better positioned for traditional commercial lending. And we're asking them for a good bit of information.
Well, sure.
They've got to have a
As
business
well we
plan,
should.
and exactly, they've got to have a business plan. They've got to have numbers, and so we very much are focused on making
And
good
that's going
loans.
to be your primary role in economic development is this program, right?
This is one piece of what we're doing. Yes, this is a way for us to certainly. We're getting calls about this program,
Sure.
And so it's a way for us to build relationships and talk about not only this program, but then also assess assess where they are, what their needs are, regardless of whether or not they're eligible. How can we better match them to resources that are available in the community? And again, just helping tell their story or making sure that they have a guide, have a champion, have a cheerleader in the process.
Absolutely. Thank you.
In broad strokes, can you tell us about a few of the individuals you've talked to that said, oh, this might, this is pretty interesting and exciting? Can you reveal just a tiny
I think we're starting to get a lot of great referrals from some of our community resource partners. So the Drake Business Accelerator, we have community entrepreneurs who are going through that business accelerator, and then Drake, the Drake leadership who's facilitating that program, they're doing exactly what we're hoping to see, where they're connecting them with us, and so we're listening to their ideas, and we've talked with Nick. Feel free to jump in as well with some examples, but we've talked with a gentleman who wants to open up kind of a smaller grocery store in a neighborhood. I won't name streets, but we have a woman who she sees the need for Des Moines to have, I don't know if, I spent a lot of time in college staying in hostels when I was traveling. Des Moines doesn't have a hostel. I did not know that. She has this interesting idea for an affordable hostel type small business space. And so just kind of navigating the requirements for that as well. So we're getting I think we're really getting a variety of interest.
Stay tuned, huh?
Stay tuned, exactly. And this is a test. We'll see where the interest lies and what the types of applications we receive. But please let us know if you all need anything in your conversations with neighbors and small businesses. And yeah,
They've probably been there.
yep, absolutely. We've been there recently.
Yeah, we had Southwest Ninth 2 months ago. Yeah.
I think that shows that, it's the complexity of opening a business, and hopefully this is a tool in the city that we have, and I'm thankful that the manager and economic development have put this office together, because I think small businesses is a catalyst for Des Moines. And when you hear hopefully you'll see the obstacles and hopefully give recommendations how we can streamline the process and what's necessary at what point, gradual improvements. So look forward to hearing some more from your area and what we can do to help get people into the business, get them open, and let them start doing business. So
Thank you.
follow up. Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll turn it back over to the manager.
That's actually all.
Okay. This is the end of the work session. It looks like we reconvene at 3:30 for a closed session, and then our regular meeting will be at 5 o'clock. So I guess we will see everybody back at those times.